Hey everybody, I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth
on Now You Know.
You know that Model 3 is the safest car in the world, don't you, Jess?
Yeah, I mean, it got the 5-star crash safety rating in every category. I mean, yeah, but what more could you want?
There's something else that you could want.
Bulletproof glass?
That would be cool, actually.
Laser deflection technology.
Oh, now you're talking. Wait, you're actually coming up with some good ideas.
Yeah, what
but
about,
let's talk about just general safety, though.
Okay, sure.
Because it turns out that the Model 3, out of all cars in the United States, has the lowest probability of injury.
So you mean you get into an accident, and the chance that you are injured is the lowest of all cars.
Right. In fact, look at this graph right here. This shows the cars that NHTSA has tested, which is all the cars on the road, basically, and the Model 3, followed by the S, followed by the X, are the three safest cars on the road.
Wow. All right. So that must mean it's down at 5.5%. There's some other things on the list that are up to 10%.
Right.
And so, I mean, wow, those cars must suck. I mean, those must be getting like 2 stars or something, right?
Actually, no. I looked at a cross-section of cars on this list. For instance, the Ford Transit rear-wheel drive, which is on the far right of this list.
That's like a 16% or something?
Yeah, that is a 5-star safety-tested car.
Wait a minute. Okay. So we're talking about probability of injury here.
Right.
So from 5.5% to 16%.
Pretty much.
That's like almost triple the chance of your injury.
Right. But almost every car on this list gets 5 stars.
It seems like some kind of kindergartens in the movies where everyone's getting gold stars.
Exactly. It's kind of like, just for showing up. And I mean, so Inside EVs sent this tweet out. It says, "It's a shame that NHTSA doesn't make this information more publicly available." Elon tweeted that he agreed. He said, "Yes, it's hard to find, not sure why." I'm sure why.
Okay, well, why?
So before we get into why I think this is, let's look at the Model 3's safety features, because I think this is some of the biggest news that you can possibly imagine. Why? Because we're talking about cars, which is a huge, big deal, and this car is the safest.
Okay.
And I think that fact alone is going to have so much to do with why it's going to sell well, why it is selling well.
Right.
Because, I mean, let's think about this. You go in to buy a car.
Right.
If you're a reasonably intelligent person, what's one of the biggest factors in deciding whether or not you want to buy this car?
Safety.
Safety.
Right.
I mean, unless you're like a 16-year-old kid who doesn't think about safety at all and just thinks about...
can't afford anything other than the $500 beater on eBay.
If you're thinking about safety, you're going to think, I want the safest car. Now, the problem we have here is that we're talking about how hard it is to figure out what the safest car is.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the safety features in the Model 3.
Sure.
All right. So the Model 3 comes equipped with every NHTSA recommended safety technology as standard equipment. Now, I want to stop there because you might be thinking, that sounds good, but I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. What is that?
If we think about automatic emergency braking, if we think about anti-lock brakes, if we think about all the technology that can go in a car to make it safe, if you see an ad for a car and it says, we've got 5-star safety rating, a lot of times if you read the fine print, you don't get the actual 5 stars unless you buy it with all the safety options. And those don't usually come standard on a car. You have to pay extra for them.
Right, like I've seen the commercials where the guy's driving along and he's not paying any attention, and all of a sudden the car stops. There's a little kid with a balloon,
right? And
he's sitting there like, oh, and
look at that very moment. They usually put the fine print which says you have to buy that option package.
I see. So it doesn't come standard.
Doesn't come standard. Now, here's the thing. I know right now the Model 3 is expensive because they're selling the long range battery and the premium edition and all that. But when it comes in a few months to the $35,000 package. It will be standard with all of this safety equipment. So the safest car in the world, you will get that with the base Model 3. I just think that shows something about the company. I think that shows that Tesla's not like, let's make them pay more to get that extra safety feature.
Nickel and dime them.
They're into safety from the very beginning. Right. So in addition to its near 50-50 weight distribution, Model 3 was also designed with an extremely low polar moment of inertia, which means that its heaviest components are located closer to the car's center of gravity. Even though Model 3 has no engine, its performance is similar to what's described as a mid-engine car due to its centered battery pack, the heaviest component of the car, and the fact that Model 3's rear motor is placed slightly in front of the rear axle rather than behind it. Not only does this architecture add to the overall agility and handling of the car, it also improves the capability of stability control by minimizing rotational kinetic energy.
Okay, so let's
That's
try
beyond me as a philosopher,
All right.
but you tell me what that means.
So, if you think about it, when you're on an office chair and you're spinning around,
Oh,
you
yeah.
can kind of
I love to do that.
Stick your arms out and you slow down, right?
Uh-huh.
And then you pull them in and you can spin faster.
Okay.
It's like that. It's like pulling your arms in, right? So all of the heaviest parts of the car are closest to the center of gravity, which means that it's much easier to get something turning than when it's all the way out at the end.
Okay.
So you can kind of imagine like a top, sort of like a pen, very easy to get it spinning, right? Whereas a bigger top,
Harder to get spinning.
way wider, harder to get it spinning, and that means that it's harder to turn it. So that way when you're driving along and you're like, oh no, there is an obstacle in my way, and you go to swerve. If you're in a car with, an engine in the front,
Right.
and heavy equipment out far, that means that when you go to turn, the car's gonna be like, nah,
Don't want to turn.
not gonna turn. Whereas this car's like, whoop whoop, and I mean, I've noticed it.
Yeah.
Driving the car,
It feels like a spaceship.
amazing. It
Yeah.
feels like a sports car.
Yeah. So the Model 3 benefits from a strong, rigid passenger compartment, fortified battery pack, and overall low center of gravity. These safety fundamentals help to prevent intrusion into the cabin and battery modules, reduce rollover risk, and distribute crash forces systematically away from the cabin, all while providing the foundation for our superior front crumple zone that is optimized to absorb energy and crush more efficiently. Here you can see how the orange internal combustion engine block is thrust towards the cabin during a frontal impact test. So that's the Audi A4, and that engine just wants to go kill you.
Right, because it has nowhere to go. It can't crumple. It's
Right.
a block of aluminum. It doesn't, it doesn't crumple.
Whereas in the front of the Model 3, just to remind everyone, other than if you get the all-wheel drive, there's a small motor. Other than that, there's basically a frunk of air. We also added state-of-the-art features and new innovations in crash structure design, restraints and airbags, and battery safety to the core of Model 3's design. In frontal crashes, Model 3's efficient front crumple zone carefully controls the deacceleration of occupants, while its advanced restraint system complements this with pre-tensioners and load limiters that keep occupants safely in place. Specially designed passenger airbags are shaped to protect an occupant's head in angled or offset crashes, and active vents dynamically adjust the internal pressure of the frontal airbags to optimize protection based on the unique characteristics of the crash. Front and knee airbags and a collapsible steering column work to further reduce injury, all contributing to Model 3's 5-star rating in frontal impact.
Right.
Now, I was surprised to hear that they have specifically designed airbags.
Right. Most manufacturers simply buy
Off the shelf.
off-the-shelf airbags, put them in their cars. I haven't heard of specially designed airbags before.
This is why I think we saw in 2014 one of the largest recalls in American history when airbags were found to be faulty. And then they got recalled, and they were in almost every car.
Right.
Now, in pole impact crashes, energy-absorbing lateral and diagonal beam structures work to mitigate the impact. This includes a high-strength aluminum bumper beam, a sway bar placed low and forward in the front of the car, cross members at the front of the steel subframe that are connected to the main crash rails, and additional diagonal beams in the subframe that distribute energy back to the crash rails when they aren't directly impacted. An ultra-high-strength martinistic steel beam is also attached to the top of the front suspension to further absorb crash energy from severe impacts, and the rear part of the subframe is shaped like a U and buckles down when impacted. These structures continue to be effective even when a front motor is added for all-wheel drive due to the fact that the subframe is designed to pull the nose of the motor down and out of the way. Model 3 also has the lowest intrusion from side pole impact of any vehicle tested by NHTSA. Unlike frontal crashes, there is little room for crumple zone in a side impact, so we patented our own pillar structures and side sills to absorb as much energy as possible in a very short distance. With less intrusion into the cabin, our side airbags have more space to inflate and cushion the occupants inside.
Right. So this is where the battery really comes into play. I mean, not only is it rooting you to the ground, really low center of gravity, but also it's this really, really rigid structural part of the car. So when you go sliding or if someone hits you, you have the battery, which just is like, no, not moving. It's basically just... it just stops the intrusion, and it's amazing to watch that because honestly, that is really going to kill you.
Right.
And having something there to stop that is amazing.
Rollover accidents are a significant contributor to injuries and deaths on U.S. roads. Tesla's vehicle architecture is fundamentally designed to have a very low center of gravity, which is accomplished by placing the heavy battery pack and electronic motors as close to the ground as possible. In the event that a rollover does occur, our internal tests show that the Model 3 body structure can withstand roof crush loads equivalent to more than 4 times its own weight and with very little structural deformation. NHTSA's standards only require that cars withstand loads of 3 times their own weight. Many companies try to build cars that perform well in crash tests, and every car company claims their vehicles are safe. But when a crash happens in real life, these test results show that if you are driving a Tesla, you have the best chance of avoiding serious injury. As we begin researching this, I began looking at this question of the Tesla gets 5 stars, just like practically every other car on this list that you're seeing here.
Right.
So it doesn't tell you the story.
Right.
And I was like, why is this? So I began to go back through the history, and I think it's kind of useful to see the history of safety in this country. So let's take a quick drive down memory lane for the timeline. So in 1910, the first drunk driving laws were put into place.
Good first step. Excellent.
1930, the first red, yellow, green traffic light.
Interesting.
1950, the first seat belt in an American car. Now, it wasn't required, but it was invented.
Yeah.
1968, the first U.S. federal safety standards for cars. 1970, NHTSA was established by the Highway Safety Act. Now, I want to tell you what NHTSA was made for. So NHTSA stands for the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration. It's responsible for reducing deaths, injuries, and economic losses resulting from motor vehicle crashes. This is accomplished by setting and enforcing safety performance standards for motor vehicles and motor vehicle equipment.
Okay.
1974, the national max speed limit of 55 miles an hour was put in place. 1978, the first frontal impact testing and child safety laws put in place. 1984, the first seat belt safety law was enacted in New York. That surprised me. 1984, until we actually have a state that implements a seatbelt law.
Wow.
1985, NHTSA starts using crash test dummies. So before 1985,
They
we
just
had
put real people in the car? What happened?
They didn't test the people.
They just looked at the car and
Just
they
looked
said,
at the car, said,
looks crashed.
"Looks pretty crashed."
Yeah, that's terrible. It looks really crumpled up.
1993, NHTSA develops the 5-star safety rating program. 1996, NHTSA starts implementing side impact testing. 1999, dual airbags are required in cars. The year 2000, TREAD was implemented, which is the Transportation Recall Act. 2001, NHTSA adds the rollover test. 2006, vehicle safety labels are required by NHTSA. When you go buy a car, it has to say what the safety standards are on that car. 2007, the electronic stability control and tire inflation monitoring systems are mandated in cars. 2010, an enhanced 5-star safety ratings program, which now includes new test dummies, side pole tests, and vehicles now get an overall vehicle score. That's what we see today, that combines the results of the frontal, the 2 side tests, and the rollover test. 2014, we get the largest vehicle recall in the nation's history. In 2016, I thought this was interesting, NHTSA adds that automatic emergency braking should be in all cars. Guess by when they want it to be implemented.
So it's 2016, so probably like 2017. Like, let's get this done. It's going to save people's lives, right?
They wanted it for 2018, but the car manufacturers lobbied, and they pushed it off to 2022. 6 years after NHTSA's like, this is a good technology, all cars should have it, we're still not going to have it for 4 more years in all cars.
So this isn't when it was developed. This is when it was basically proven.
Proven to
and
work.
NHTSA was like, this is a good thing to have in your car.
Right.
And it's not required.
Nope. The manufacturers basically pushed that off to 2022. Now, it is in the Model 3. I'm not the only one who thinks this 5-star system is flawed. I mean, let's look at it. Like we said, your car does really well, you get 5 stars. Your car doesn't do so well, you get 5 stars.
Right.
How is the consumer supposed to basically know what the difference is, and why did NHTSA do it this way? Well, I'll tell you pretty much why they did it this way. Sure. Elon tweeted, like, why do they hide the data? Mm-hmm. I think, this is just my opinion, I think it's because we've talked before about Volvo. Volvo came along in the 70s and 80s with their big marketing was, our cars are super duper safe.
Right. And they were expensive.
They were expensive. They had ads on TV that showed them in crash tests. This was the first time on like TV that you'd actually see a car voluntarily showing them getting into a crash. Mm-hmm. And they showed crash test dummies. They showed that their cars were safe, and people started buying them.
Right.
Because if you have a family, that's the number one, if anyone basically,
Right.
that's the number one thing you think about. And I think what happened was because don't forget, Volvo is not an American car company.
Right.
At the time, it was a Swedish car company. American car companies lobbied NHTSA and the government and said, hey, whoa, we're going to have to work really hard and spend a lot of money to make our cars this safe. Can we
Right.
come up with something that'll slow the public down on this? How about a 5-star system
Right.
that doesn't give any incentive for making our cars safer? The Volvo will get 5 stars, and we'll get 5 stars. I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Let's look at this quote here from Henry Jasny, who's the General Counsel for Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. This is an alliance of consumer, health, and safety groups and insurance companies and agents. So he said, we never liked it. This meaning the new car assessment program that NHTSA uses, because it can award a car 1 star even if it performs poorly and is minimally compliant. But a consumer could look at the vehicle and say, well, this gets a star, and believe that it's a positive thing. We felt that could be misleading. So what do the stars mean?
Right.
So I looked into it, and it's hard to find this information actually, but let's look at this. The frontal crash test, here it is. So 5 stars, a 10% or less chance of injury. 4 stars, 11 to 20% chance of injury. 3 stars, 21 to 35% chance of injury. And 2 stars is 36 to 45% chance of injury. And 1 star means 46% or greater chance of injury. So
Right.
that could be, 82%. It gets 1 star. It could be 100% and
Wow.
it gets 1 star.
That's
I mean, to me, a star means okay, yeah, and that shouldn't mean that if it's 46% or greater chance of injury.
right. It's like flipping a coin, basically.
I mean, I could put myself in a cardboard box, roll myself down a hill, and I'd still get 1 star. I mean, I just made myself a 1-star cardboard box.
Right. Okay. What about side impact tests?
Okay, so for side impact tests, 5 stars means 5% or less chance of injury. 4 stars is 6 to 10% chance of injury. 3 stars is 11 to 20% chance. 2 stars is 21 to 25. 1 star is 26% or greater. Now, do you see something funny there?
It's It's like half.
5 stars is a 5% difference. 4 stars, 5% difference. When we get to 3 stars, we get a 10% difference. 2 stars, we go back to a 5% difference.
What?
And 1 star goes to 26%, as opposed to in the frontal crash test, it's 46%. Like, it doesn't...
So you
they've
could be
changed
looking at it and be like, oh, it's so weird that this car gets a 1 star in the side impact, but gets a 3 star in the front impact. Well, I guess it must be safer to crash straight on, even though your percentage of injury is roughly the same.
Exactly.
That's a little weird.
And here's my thing. Why don't we just give the actual numbers to people and say, this car crashed, and in this crash, you would have a 24% chance of injury in a side impact? Like, give
Right.
them the number. Why do we just say 5 star?
That's super arbitrary. You could be like, oh, it gets 8 Patronis. There you go.
Right.
8 Patronis. How about that?
But then look at this. Let's
Yeah.
look at the rollover resistance test. This, if you get 5 stars, it's a 10% or less risk of rollover. Nothing to do with injury.
Okay.
4 stars, 10 to 20% risk of rollover. 3 stars, 20 to 30% risk of rollover. 2 stars, 30 to 40% risk of rollover. And 1 star is a 40% or greater risk of rollover. Again, nothing to do with injury anymore.
Right.
It doesn't tell you how you're going to fare in the rollover. It just tells you the chance that it will roll over.
Interesting.
And to
Okay.
me, that's not very helpful.
Okay. So what about rear end crash tests?
Oh, rear end crash tests.
You know, like if you get rear ended.
Yeah.
I mean, there's kind of.
that happens a lot.
Right.
Yeah, so let's look that up.
Okay.
Let's see. NHTSA says that they don't do that because they have a limited budget and they must concentrate their ratings on front and side impact crashes. They have a limited budget, Jesse. They can't test everything.
Okay. In 2017, NHTSA's budget was $1,181,272,000.
Yeah.
So how much more do we need to pay? I mean, and also
What?
their whole job is for safety.
Right.
And yet you're ignoring.
1/2 of pretty much all the crashes like that.
Right.
Yeah. And here's the thing. When a car manufacturer needs to have their car tested, they give those cars to the government to test, right? So first of all, the government doesn't pay for the cars. The manufacturer does.
Sure.
So I'm going to suggest that we change the system. Instead of the federal government running the test facilities, we set up private companies with the test facility.
Whoa. You can't have private companies testing important stuff.
They do now. Let's say you want to get your water tested. Where do you send it? Do you send it to the government or do you send it to a private lab?
I don't know. You send it to the public water tester facility.
No, in most cases you send it to a private lab that's been certified by the state to be a legit lab, and then you get your results back. And the reason you do this is because if the government were to run it, it would probably take forever to get your results back.
I see. And also, it'd be taxpayer funded as opposed to manufacturer funded?
Right. I mean, here's what I'm saying. Why don't we make it so that we test for whatever we want to test for in a car? The manufacturer sends it to a private testing facility.
And they pay for it.
And then we make sure that that was legit, like the NHTSA can send their inspectors out and make sure the testing is done properly. It would cost the taxpayers less money because it would be done by a private company, which we all know private companies can do things more efficiently than the government. Then we would get the results we want. We could do rear impact testing instead of this argument, oh, we don't have the budget for it. Well, here's more reasons why the 5-star system sucks. Okay, so IIHS, which is the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, President Adrian Lund, said that IIHS began its testing program because people still were dying in car crashes despite the frontal crash testing that NHTSA had been doing for years. By 1995, he said most vehicles were performing well in the government's frontal crash test, earning 4 and 5 stars. But people were still dying in frontal crashes. According to IIHS, about half of the crash deaths occur in frontal crashes. We looked at why people were dying, even though they were seatbelted, and we found intrusion was a big part of the problem. In a crash that's not totally head-on, there is less of a vehicle's area to manage the energy of the crash. So there is more structural damage to the occupant compartment, and passengers are more prone to injury.
And this is what we were talking about with some of those diagonal members that would go to the crash bars in the Model 3.
Right.
It's specifically to prevent that kind of thing.
Yeah, NHTSA's frontal offset test wasn't set up to assess that kind of crash, so IIHS began its own frontal offset crash testing. In a frontal crash, the whole vehicle is trying to protect the passengers. When it's offset, and only part of the vehicle is involved in energy absorption, it's a tougher test, said Henry Jasny. In 1995, when IIHS presented its first frontal offset test results, cars that it rated marginal or poor were by and large those that NHTSA had awarded 3 stars at least. There were also some 4 and 5-star cars. More recently, IIHS introduced the small overlap crash tests, which you're seeing here, which further raised the bar. These are examples of why the IIHS program might trump the government's. IIHS doesn't have the political pressure and regulatory red tape that NHTSA faces when it comes to changing or adding tests, and the fact that it has taken NHTSA until 2010 to raise its testing bar is proof of that, Lund said. Generally speaking, I think we're ahead of the federal government because we can move more quickly. We're better in the sense that we address new ways in which people need to be protected. We're typically finding problems in vehicles that NHTSA says are good. As Tesla said, based on the advanced architecture of Model S and X, which were previously found by NHTSA to have the lowest and second lowest probabilities of injuries of all cars ever tested, we engineered Model 3 to be the safest car ever built. Now, not only has Model 3 achieved a perfect 5-star safety rating in every category and subcategory, but NHTSA's tests also show that it has the lowest probability of injury of all cars the safety agency has ever tested.
So, I mean, this does make me feel good because it did really well in the NHTSA tests. I do want to see what the IIHS tests are. We don't have that data yet, so all we can see are the NHTSA tests. And, I mean, it did fantastically. Not too much of a surprise why. And
also real-world tests. I mean, let's look at this Model X crash that just came in a couple days ago. This is a tweet from Bonnie Norman. She's a big Tesla Forum member, well-trusted. This is a quote from a friend. "I truly believe that if I had been in another vehicle, I would not be here today. Truck that hit me was doing 45 and stopped within feet of impact. Imagine the energy transfer. Through tow hitch from the front 65 feet. And the front bumper was thrown 75 inches.
Wow.
No flames, just a driver who walked away. And that's in an unavoidable collision, right? I mean, it's a guy runs a red light.
Right.
There's nothing you can do. And it was a truck full of construction equipment. So this thing weighed like 8,800 pounds.
Right. Holy crap.
And aside from some bruises, driver walks away.
That's amazing.
That's why you want to be in these cars, because when you're on the road, you can't control every factor.
Right.
I mean, you can be the safest driver out there, but like a deer runs in front of you or someone runs a red light or whatever, or bad conditions, you're going to hit something.
Right.
Many companies try to build cars that perform well in crash tests, and every car company claims their vehicles are safe. But when a crash happens in real life, these test results show that if you are driving a Tesla, you have the best chance of avoiding serious injury. Elon tweeted out, exactly. A Tesla is objectively much safer in a crash than all other cars, according to NHTSA's own calculations. This is just physics. I want to point out, we kind of lump safety ideas all together in one thing, but the Tesla Model 3 wins on all three of these fronts, okay?
Right.
It is number one in avoiding a crash.
Right, which we weren't even talking about this entire episode.
Right.
Automatic emergency braking. I mean, we mentioned it a little bit. It comes standard with the Model 3.
Right.
Base Model 3, $35,000 Model 3 comes with automatic emergency braking. Almost every other car commercial you see where they advertise automatic emergency braking, that is an extra feature that you must add.
Pay for.
That is an option. That is not standard.
Right. You're number one in avoiding a crash to begin with. Mm-hmm. When the car gets into a crash, in terms of damage to the car, chances it's going to roll over, it's number one. Mm-hmm. And then finally, probably just as important, if not most important, is if you are in a crash, you have the lowest probability of injury to the occupants.
Right.
To me, this is a mic drop moment because I thought when we saw the Model 3 being unveiled, wow, yeah, it looks really cool. They really knocked it out of the park. Great job, Franz and team. You made it look awesome. This is really good. Oh, the range, that's really cool. You were able to pull off 220 miles there. That's really great.
Right. Oh, the acceleration, 0 to 60 in 5.5 seconds. Wow,
awesome.
that's great.
You were able to get it to be $35,000 starting price. Amazing.
Right.
Wow, a big panoramic, glass roof. Cool. Oh, a cool screen in the front. Awesome. These are all wonderful things. I didn't know it was going to drive this awesome. I didn't know it was going to be this safe.
Right.
I didn't know that basically when every person gets their Model 3, from the second they get in it, there's just a big Tesla smile on their face, and they're so happy they did it. And they write to us every day saying, I'm never going back.
And these are from people who, had to deal with a whole bunch of...
Waiting.
Yeah, waiting, and also, miscommunications, and, I hate Tesla. I still don't have my car,
Or people who just didn't want to get this more expensive model. They wanted the $35,000 model, but they're like, you know what? I can't wait. And they pulled the trigger, and now they're super duper happy.
Right. These people not only are happy, but they might live longer.
Yeah.
You don't know what kind of accident they were going to be getting into. If they get into the same accident now, I think that they'll live much longer.
Yeah. And it goes back to what made me mad and why we did this episode, is that for decades here, as you've seen from our timeline, we could have been making cars safer. But at each turn, the car manufacturers lobbied the government and said, whoa, back off.
We don't need seatbelts.
Yeah,
what are you,
slow
crazy?
down on that. I mean, we all know how many years they fought the government on implementing seatbelt laws and all these other things.
Airbags.
Right.
Now it's automatic emergency braking. You're not going to see that standard for another
4 years.
4 years.
Yeah. When we know it works.
Right. It's a proven technology.
Right.
NHTSA wants all car manufacturers to implement this in their cars.
And I'm not saying that some manufacturer might not have some legitimate reason why they can't implement it, this year. Mm-hmm. Maybe they need a little extra time to tool something up or whatever. But that's not what NHTSA said. They didn't say implement it and we'll give you a pass if you can't. They basically said, oh yeah, just push it way, way down the road.
Right.
Till by the time 2022 rolls around, we're probably going to have even better technology.
Right. And people might be saying, oh, but they're going to come out with it. But I would phrase it this way. I mean, you have someone who gets into an accident and they die, and their family is devastated. And that accident could have been prevented by automatic emergency braking.
And this is why Elon implemented autopilot. He heard about a bicyclist who died in an accident, and he thought and it was by a Tesla. If that Tesla had autopilot, that might not have happened.
Right.
So he cared about the safety of the people, and he changed the timeline of his cars.
Right. It's not about profit.
He didn't go to his CFO and say, bean counter, let's count how much money we'd make if we did it this way or that way. That was not part of his decision making. That's why I love this company. They put safety first.
Right. And that's why they have such a strong brand. When people approach Tesla for the first time and they see people like us and probably like you, they go I don't get it. These people are...
You're like religious zealots or something.
What the heck is wrong with you people? No, it's that the safety and many other aspects of Tesla are so positive, so good, that it's impossible to be I don't know.
And I just want to point out one last thing, which is if we go back to this graph and we look at how statistically safe you are in the Model 3, it is not a teeny a 0.1%. it drops off dramatically to the Model 3. And so if you take the under 6% chance of getting injured in the Model 3 and compare it to, let's say, a 9% chance, that is a huge difference. I know you're like, well, 9%, 6%, it's only 3%. Not really. It's a 33% chance less that you will get injured in the Model 3. It's a huge statistical difference.
Right.
And I think that's the problem. Most people just don't, they're like, whatever, 5 stars.
Right.
Whatever.
3, 9, whatever. Right.
That's 5 stars. It's a huge difference.
Right.
And that's one of the things you need to get into people's heads when they start talking about the Model 3. It's pushing the entire car industry. They're all going to have to, like, I'm sure right now there's board meetings where they're going, oh crap, we have to make our cars safe.
Thank you so much for watching this episode of Now You Know. We really hope that you enjoyed it. If you hit the like button, it does this weird thing with YouTube where YouTube will now suggest that video to someone who otherwise wouldn't have had seen this video on their feed. If you don't want to click it, if you didn't like this video, don't click it. If you want a stranger to see it, if you want more people to know about this kind of thing, hit the like button. I don't like telling you to do it. I wish that YouTube would just be like, wow, this person's watched to the end of the video. Maybe I should tell someone else about it.
No,
it's this dumb like system. So you have to hit that thumbs up.
If you're looking over to the side here, which side's it on, Jesse? The list of other videos.
Yep.
Is it that side?
Yeah, probably over here. But I mean, you could be on a TV. You could be on your phone.
Okay, but like most times when you watch a video, there's a list of other videos.
On the computer,
I
yeah.
learned that 70% of videos that you watch are from clicking one of those.
Right.
And those videos get there because of either hitting the like button or not.
So if you want to, again, you don't have to. I'm not going to come to your house and yell at you. Thanks so much for watching. Now you know.